Okay, please quickly, I'm going to go around the virtual room. I want you to just introduce yourself, your name, and what's one aspect of nature that amazes you most? Choose one aspect of nature. Today's class is going to be focused on nature and Tu Bishvat. So I will call on you. Let's start with Emmanuel. Well, I already gave away your name, but your name, and maybe where you're tuning in from, and one aspect of nature that amazes you most.
I'm Emmanuel. I am tuning in from Miami, and I would say the one thing would be, I would say probably water, like ocean.
It's good. From California to Miami, that makes a lot of sense. How about you, Suzanne?
Yeah, I'm Suzanne. I'm on vacation in New Mexico right now. What I think is really cool in today's urban jungle is how grounding nature is and how it just instantly reconnects me to source.
Love that. Jenny.
Hey, I'm Jenny. I'm here in Miami. One thing about nature that amazes me is how alive it is. Pretty awesome.
We're going to talk a lot about that today, actually. Great segue. Katya?
Hi, I'm Katya. I live in Oklahoma, but I'm not originally from here. Being a Caribbean girl, I will say I love the mountains. Even though we're surrounded by water, I just love the mountains.
It's awesome. Lakey. Just got to unmute yourself. There you go.
Okay. I'm a mountain girl too, and I've spent a lot of time delving into that. And I think what I love most about mountains is, first of all, how stoic they are, but also that they've been just land that's been broken and then erupted higher. So to me, it's just like an instant reflection.
We often don't pay attention to when we see cliffs or we see the way land is made, what it took, all the years of effect that it took. That's awesome. All right. I got to get into the mountains now. Parents, can you introduce yourselves? You have to unmute yourself.
There.
I'm David Bortz. I'm newly retired by 2 days. So I'm just finding my feet. And
that's a question, but we don't know what
sorry,
the question was.
we didn't know what the question was.
What amazes you about nature? One example.
I think sunsets, even though I've seen so many of them, but they never get old. The colors.
I can't believe no one said sunset yet. Yeah, it's a good one.
So I'm Ellen, and what amazes me most about nature is when you look at a tree and the sun shines on the tree, the leaves have plenty of different colors. I can spend hours looking at the leaves, different greens, according to how the light of the sun hits them.
Wow. Very nice. All right. Love it. And congrats on retirement. Lots of time to enjoy nature now. Hannah, if you're able to speak, I know some of you it's hard for you, but if you're able to.
Yes. Hi. I love everybody's answers so far. I agree with the ocean and the sunsets, I think. And also seeing the sun reflect on the leaves of trees too, are all
I'm pretty sure where you live in Encinitas is ocean sunsets are probably one of my favorite places on earth to get that. So you're in the right spot.
Come visit Moisha House.
Everyone head to Moisha House, Encinitas. It's well worth the trip. Glad you're with us, Hannah. And last but not least, Drew, are you able to share what amazes you about nature and where you're tuning in from?
Yeah, I have to mirror what Hannah Prager said. There's been a lot of really amazing responses out there. Two responses that definitely resonated with me is one was from Suzanne, how nature's so grounding, and the other one's actually from Mama Bortz. I definitely, I'm very amazed when I look at nature on a very small scale and I see the chain reaction of, let's say how intricate a leaf is and the veins inside of it. And then when you look at it on a much grander scale and you look at the solar system and you just, to picture how big everything is out there, it's totally amazing.
Wow, I loved all those answers. Thanks, Drew. And Julian just popped on, or Chaya. Can you share what is one aspect of nature that you appreciate?
It's funny enough, I'm driving right now and I'm looking at a really nice sunset. And first thing I think of is, as you was just mentioning, with the kind of like just the solar system, everything is constant, but we kind of lose track and don't appreciate the beautiful things that happen around us in nature every day. When you see sunset, it kind of reminds you kind of like little things that happen, like a rainbow, a sunset, and you can see God's handiwork in the sky right in your face.
Love it. Yeah, a sunset's definitely a divine flex. It's God flexing, being like, sometimes God hides in nature. Like when I'm on the subway and I'm in like the subway station, I don't really see it as much, but like a sunset is God saying like, all right, here and there, I'm not going to hide from you. I'm just going to like flex my muscle right here. So I wrote a book and I loved all your answers. The one example of how deep you can go with just one element is the eye, the human eye. So I wrote down here a little snippet from it. What is happening inside your eye as you read words on a page or look at the screen right now? Light passes through the front of the eye, which is the pupil, and through the lens. The light goes towards the back of the eye, which is the retina. And in a space less than 1 square inch, there are approximately 100 million small machines that are shaped like rods. Every rod is connected by a nerve fiber to the brain. The rods contain a chemical substance called visual purple, rhodopsin. When the light reaches the rod, it causes the visual purple to break down. This breakdown generates several millionths of a volt of electricity, and this electricity is transmitted to the brain through the optic nerve at about 300 miles per hour. The brain then interprets the signals coming in, identifies what is being seen, and remembers the image. This entire process is completed in about 2/1000th of a second. So even within the superficial, the beauty that we see in nature, the amount of detail and divine intelligence in everything that we see can really cause a feeling of grandeur. Maimonides says, if you want to come to a feeling of love for God, is to study his world, to appreciate nature and the science behind it. Science and religion definitely work well together. And the Torah takes it to the next level. And that's what we're going to talk about tonight, because we're in the month of Shevat, and Shevat is punctuated by the 15th day of Shevat, which is the new year for trees. So this is a month connected to nature and connected to physicality and how to appreciate it properly. Now, the Torah says that the world is a guf gadol, a big body, meaning that you and I are the microcosm for the whole universe. Everything we see in the universe is actually found within us on some level. You know, I think it was Drew or my mother who mentioned that a leaf has veins on it, or you look at a walnut and it looks like the brain, or you look at an avocado and it might be like the womb, the stomach. Every aspect, they say that the sun and the moon are like the two eyes, the hair on our head are like the stars of the sky. Everything that occurs, like the majority of a human being is water. The majority of the world is water. If you look at the 3 major eye colors, we have brown, blue, and green. If you look at the 3 majority colors in nature, we've got brown, blue, and green. If you look at the seed of a tree, you plant a seed in the ground. That seed, that little seed, grows slowly, slowly. Mother Earth, the feminine side, it takes the masculine, it takes the seed and it builds branches of trees slowly but surely until it has fruit, and that fruit has seeds that you plant again, and it makes so too with human beings, right? A human starts as a seed. The womb, the mother, just like Mother Earth, takes that seed and builds it slowly, branches, details, slowly builds it out into its full potential until it's born. And once it grows to fruition, that child can also have more children, theoretically, God willing, until infinity, just like with trees. So we're really going to explore the divine detail that we can find in the world and how we can connect to Hashem through it. One other cool thing I love thinking about is the senses of the face. Just to show you the order, the power, the way the face is set up, what's the lowest sense is the mouth. If I scream out, probably about 100, 150 yards away, somebody will hear me, but not further than that. You know, somebody like 5 miles away is not going to hear my shout. Next is the nose, the smell. I can smell something from pretty far away. You know, if there's a fire, God forbid, like 20 miles away, the smoke might make its way to me. There's ability to connect to it. If you take, and dogs, for example, can you know, there's smell has a great power. Hearing, the next on the face, you can hear something from, I think the loudest was an earthquake or an explosion or something, not an earthquake. There was an explosion in Krakatoa in Japan in the 1800s, and they were able to hear it from another island or country away. And finally, you have sight. Sight, not only can you see from a mountaintop, you can actually see the moon and the stars. You can see very far. What's the last sense or the last human faculty higher than your eyes? It's your mind, your brain. And your mind, like Einstein, can think about things that are further than the eyes can even see. So Hashem has designed our bodies in a way that elevate in power. Okay. So the question for tonight is, why do we need a Tu Bishvat? Why do we need a new year for nature? It's kind of cool to think about that we have, you know, a new year for different things. We have the new year for the actual calendar year. We've got the new year for trees. There are other ways of marking time. And first of all, the basic answer. The basic answer is, according to Torah law, a lot of the mitzvot are based on the Tu Bishvat. For example, there's something called Shemitah. Shemitah is a 7-year cycle. So if you own a field in Israel, there are 7 years, 6 years you can grow and reap. 7th year, you cannot work. You have to leave your land free for anybody to come take what they want. It's a beautiful concept. It's almost like not communism, not capitalism, but like just a little bit of a blend right there, where you work, you hustle for the 6 years, and the 7th year you leave it fallow for the poor and for everyone to take. What does that remind you of? 6 and then 7 is Shabbat, right? 6 days you shall work, 7th day you shall rest. That macro is 6 years you shall work, the 7th you shall rest. Now, to get into a little more detail here, and this, there's 613 commandments. I'm going to give you a bunch right now that's kind of embedded in the next few. So within Shemitah, you also have, in a time, by the way, this is only in the times of the Holy Temple, this next law. On the first year, the 2nd year, the 4th year, and the 5th year, farmers had to separate Meiser, which is of 1/10 of their produce, and they had to go up to Jerusalem and eat it. And that was called Meiser Sheni, the 2nd tithe. Why is it called the 2nd tithe? Because it's in addition to, you're supposed to give 2% of your crops to the Kohanim, the priests, and 10% to the Levim, because those two are busy serving God in the temple, so we would support them. So it must remind you of giving charity, right? Judaism says you give 10% to tzedakah. We would give 10% of our crops to those in need. And today we do it through 10% charity. Now, if you notice, there's still 2 years left. Year 3 and year 6, they would give that 2nd tithe to poor people, Meiser Ani, to the poor. Now, on the Shemitah year, the 7th sabbatical year, no tithes were separated. Everything is ownerless for anybody to take. So it's clearly important to have a Tu Bishvat, to know when the year starts with your field, when to count the time. I bet we could go very deep philosophically on what that means, that there's almost a separate new year for nature, like the respect we have for the earth, the respect we have that it has its own. What do you mean? Just follow the people's new year. What do you mean there's a separate new year for nature? Follow the Rosh Hashanah. Like, who cares? You're subservient to us. We're the ones who rule the earth. But clearly there's a certain kind of respect that we have, that nature has its own independence from our rule. It's customary on Tu Bishvat to do special stuff. So it's in 2 weeks. I think it comes out on January. I'll get you the exact date. But what we do is, especially Sephardim, my mother does this, and those that are into the Kabbalistic tradition, they do a Seder, a special meal where you have the different 7 fruits of Israel. Anybody should try to get a special fruit and make the blessing Shechianu on the fruit. And we honor the day of nature. Now, let's transition into looking at it on a deeper level, looking on it from a Kabbalistic perspective. What is going on Tu Bishvat? How are we supposed to approach nature? What was the first commandment? Feel free to unmute yourselves or get involved if you'd like. What was the first commandment on earth?
I am Hashem, your God.
Oh, okay. So that was actually the first of the 10 commandments. What was the first one before the Torah was given to humans?
Rosh Chodesh.
Actually, yes. Rosh Chodesh was the first one given to the Jewish people before the Torah was given as a nation. What was the first one given to just any human at all? Peru. It actually is Peru. How do I re-say it? Mitzvah means commandment. What was the first commandment that God asked Adam and Eve? It wasn't a positive one. It was a prohibition.
Do not eat from the Etzadat.
That's the one. But I love the knowledge in this room. We're not messing around over here. It's high level scholarship going on. Don't eat from the tree of knowledge. By the way, not an apple tree, as we know. If you've taken my classes before, it was not an apple. There's different opinions what it was. Some say it was grapes. And if they would have waited a few more hours, Shabbat would have come in. They would have squeezed the grapes into Kiddush, and they would have ushered in the redemption. Spoiler alert, they did not listen, and they ate. And I love you gotta have a Jewish mom in the room in order to have support for your jokes. Otherwise, it's left cold. It's left just listless. Everyone just looks at you, all that hard work and all that humor. So that was another God flex. Moms, for sure. It's like, I'm around. God's like, I'm around. I'm here. How do we fix Adam and Eve's eating? So I'm going to tell you something that I thought was very powerful when I heard it. Rabbi Tzadok Cohen of Lublin, very trippy Hasidic rabbi from the 1800s. He says an amazing thing. He says that the sin was not in eating from the fruit. That was not the issue. The issue was in how they ate. It was separating the act from the creator. It's the concept of taking pleasure and forgetting about the source of that pleasure. So there's an ancient book called Sefer Yetzirah. It's the English version. And in Sefer Yetzirah, it's the oldest book of Kabbalah, says that this month, every month is connected to a different aspect, a different element to rectify. And it says that the element that you have to rectify in this month of Shevat is pleasure and eating. Two great things. And in terms of Hebrew letters, the letter that corresponds to this month is the letter Tzadik. And Tzaddik, we know, is connected to Yosef HaTzadik, Joseph. What is Joseph famous for in the Torah? What did he have to overcome as a temptation? Was Potiphar's wife, that he was the ultimate tzaddik, the one who was able to stay true to his morals regardless of the temptation. So that's the power of this month. And we know that negative pleasure seeking can manifest in, like, with us humans, there's no shortage. It could be in material acquisition. It can be in seeking honor. It can be an addiction to power. It can be in intimacy. It can be in wanting praise from everybody. It can be drugs. It could be something as small as attention seeking at all times. So we all struggle in different ways with how to channel our desires in a positive, elevated way. So the way the sages say we're able to rectify our Adam and Eve's taking pleasure without acknowledging its source is by doing just that. What do we do when we eat and drink? What does Judaism say? Are you supposed to just see something and eat it or drink it straight up? Anybody know what we do before we eat and drink or after? We make a blessing. We make a bracha. A bracha, a blessing, is simply acknowledging that what I'm enjoying right now is a gift. So Judaism is not like some religions where it says physicality is just bad. Don't eat, don't drink, don't get married, don't enjoy anything of this world. What Judaism says is don't disconnect this from its source. It's like stealing. If we eat and drink without acknowledging its source, it's not ours. So it's acknowledging the truth And I'm taking the apple, I'm eating it, and I'm realizing it's a loving gift from God to sustain me, to make me be able to live longer, and also to give me pleasure. And when we take pleasure from something mindfully and consciously, we rectify the sin of Adam and Eve a little bit more. And when you're eating, and we could do this another time, a mindful eating exercise, but when you chew it, when you taste it, when you swallow the food, you can close your eyes and you can actually give thanks to God when you do it, or even at the very least before we start. And the Baal Shem Tov says he takes it a step further. And it's kind of like a mystical way of looking at pleasure in general. But he says that the way to not get too sunken into the physical pleasure is to, while you're enjoying it, is to have a spiritual intention to realize that all beauty and all pleasure is rooted in the Shekhinah, is rooted in God's divine presence. And he says, why should I dedicate my whole life and all my desire to a spark of the source when I could have the whole thing, when I could connect to the source? So of course, enjoy the physical world, but also put time and effort into your spiritual life, because ultimately you're connecting to whatever we love in the world. And that could, by the way, even from sports to music to movies to artwork to mansions to the beach to sunsets, it's all God's divine, it's all divine creativity. It's just one element of it. So when you pray or learn Torah, you're actually connecting to the source of all that. Even if you don't see the sunset in the pages of the Torah, it's rooted in the place that is the source of all of it. So we say, Baal Shem Tov would say, don't get too carried away by this, that, or another. Rather, taste the cake and realize, like, wow, like this is good, but how much more amazing is the source of this, the one who this comes from. Okay. How at all is it possible? How does Kabbalah, how does Torah explain it's possible that we could even separate? Like, why is there such a reality that could happen where someone could live their entire life and enjoy the physical world without ever thinking about the source of it? How does that happen? So I'm going to give you the mechanics on 2 levels of how this came to be. Everyone still with me? Not too much? All right. Props coming out Thursday night. Getting into it, but brace yourselves. We're going to dive in now into the spiritual mechanics of reality. So to understand the reality we live in, we have to go back to the beginning of the Torah. The beginning of the Torah says, in the Bereshit story, in Genesis, the name that they use for God is not the 4-letter name of God. It's the name Elohim with an H, but I'll say Elohim. That name of God, if you were to take the letters and the numbers called Gematria, you would get 86. 86 is Hateva, nature. So that name of God is the way this infinite being decided to manifest in a natural way, meaning concealing his presence. Nature conceals God. Why? It doesn't have to, but it does usually because you only see a repetitious cycle of nature and you forget the one who's behind it. So another word, hateva, is matbea, means to drown or sink, something that's sunk. Meaning when you see something sunken in the water, you can't see it well. It's been submerged. God is sunken in nature. His existence to the naked eye doesn't have to be. You could just see beauty of nature and not notice that there's a God behind it. Right? Now, if you look at a painting in a museum, hopefully you want to look deeper and try to learn about the artist behind it. But sometimes you can just stay on the outside and just notice it for what it is and move on. You can see a building and not think about the architect as well. So that's something that's on us. And hopefully at the end of this class, we will leave this experience trying to notice God more in the natural world. Because ultimately, Elohim, that name of God, 86, is the same number as Kli Havaya, the vessel of the transcendent God. God's 4-letter name is 26. Kli, vessel, is 50, is 60. And it's the idea that this nature that God made for us, this world, is simply a vessel for his infinite expression. And to give us free choice to either recognize him or not in it. But Elohim, God's natural way of expression, is no different than God's Havaya, God's transcendent way of expression, miraculous way of expression, infinite way of expression. And that's why, what's the most famous prayer in Judaism? It's a one-liner. Hit me with it.
The Shema?
Exactly. The Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. Hear, O Israel, that the infinite God is the same as the way God expresses in nature. If I cover my face with my hand, are you still looking at me? Absolutely. This is still me. This is a higher expression of me, but this is me too. Nature is God hiding with his hand. Nature is God hiding, but expressing through hiding. Like, for, it helps when you start to read the verses this way. Like when Moshe says, God, I want to see your face, what he means is, I want to see you beyond the hand. I don't want to just see your expression in a natural way. I want to understand the transcendent aspect of you that I don't yet know. It's not actual face or actual hand. So this is the power of saying Shema Yisrael every morning and every evening. It's the mitzvah, is to that one line, and the V'ahavta is to remind us that the day that we're about to approach, all the natural things, is also God's expression. Okay, we are now going to go one step deeper. That's in the expression in the world, how God expressed creation. But Kabbalah explains that this separation that we see goes back to a time in heavenly formation of reality. It was called Shvirat HaKelim. God expressed his infinite light and it exploded. It was too much. The vessels, the way that God wanted to express his infinite light, the vessels couldn't handle that expression. Like imagine you try to explain something to a child that's way over his head, way too much information at once. His vessel, his mind cannot handle it. It shatters metaphorically. God's expression of light was too much, and that shattering created what we call divine sparks. And those divine sparks is pretty much, according to Kabbalah, what we're here on earth to do is to rectify those fallen sparks. That's what we're here to do. It's everywhere. And not only is it everywhere, but every human, each of you, have certain sparks that you are destined and needed to elevate, which is why you might live where you live throughout your life. It's why you might own the things you own. It's why you might come across even something as simple as orange juice at a certain stand. It's there for a reason, for you to either make a blessing or to have good intention, or even to utilize the energy you get from that to do good in the world. That is how we elevate and rectify that specific thing that's meant for us, right? Not everything's meant for us. Those things that are meant for us. That explains a lot of things in the Torah. Yaakov, Jacob, it says that he left a couple of bottles or vessels. He went across the river to get them, and then he wrestles the angel. What do you mean? Just leave your cups behind. You don't have to go back to get your bottles. That's because Yaakov was a tzaddik. He understood that everything that came his way was there for a reason. Now, I don't encourage hoarding over here, that everything that comes is what you have to have. I think Marie Kondo would appreciate this Dvar Torah. But there's an idea that what you have in your possession, the people you involve with, the places and events in your life are all part of your, and what's cool about this, there's a famous saying today in the self-help generation, there's an idea that life isn't happening to you, life is happening for you. But according to Kabbalah, life isn't just happening for you. Everything that happens to you is you. Meaning that everything that happens to you in your life, everything you come across, every event is connected to your soul. It has certain sparks that you are meant to rectify. So on Monday, we're going to start a course on the Hebrew letters. And the letter Aleph is made up of a Yud, and a Vav. Meaning a Yud, God, a Yud, your soul, and the Vav it's heaven and earth, and the Vav is our job. Our job is to unite heaven and earth. And when you unite heaven and earth internally, through your growth, it also fixes the macrocosm of the universe. And connecting heaven and earth internally in your life is what we're talking about. It's involving yourself in the physical world, but doing it in a way with a higher intention, and that unifies heaven and earth. The Torah says, "Lo al halechem levado yichya ha'adam," that a person doesn't survive, doesn't live just on the bread he eats, but rather on the word of God within that. So the body desires chewing stuff. The soul desires the divine sparks that are latent in that thing that you are about to consume. So it could even be why we like certain things. Some people like sweet, some people like sour, some people like this, like that. There's certain properties, spiritual properties in things that there's a reason why some people want to live in Italy and why some people want to live in Vegas or other places. Everyone has their place because maybe your soul has to rectify sparks in that place. Or maybe it's from a past life that, you know, you had some amazing, you were the queen of that country and now you're like, you know, I'd like to get back to my glory days. I want to go back to this place in this life. My life sucks now. My past life is so much cooler. Probably doubtful. Life in the past was pretty rough. So that's probably why we have it so good, because we had it so bad. So God says to the angels, or there's actually a discussion who he was speaking to. He says, let us make man in our image. What do you mean, let us make man in our image? Who's our? Who's us? Many interpretations. The Ramban, Nachmanides, he says us is the totality of everything that preceded human beings, meaning humans came last. So when God says, let us make man in our image, he means in our, everything that exists, heaven and earth, body and soul. We are made up of total physicality, right? God formed Adam from the dust of the earth, but then he blew a soul from the highest places. So a human has the potential to be as low as earth, lower than animals even, as we've seen in human history and we see today. And humans can also be greater than the greatest of angels. We can create anything, the ability to create another human, or according to what we're going to learn in the Hebrew letter course, the ability to create anything from scratch through our prayer, through our intention. We have the freedom of choice to be pure light or to be a vicious beast, basically. We really have all of it within us. Let's get a little specific in how we connect to nature. Torah says in Deuteronomy 20:19, Devarim, Adam eitz hasarehu, that man is a tree of the field. Human is like a tree. Of all of nature, we're most like a tree. Now, you should know that Kabbalah divides up reality into 4 parts. Inanimate matter, which is like earth, rocks, things that don't even show life from the naked eye. Then you have someach, growing matter, which is like plants, flowers, trees, all that. Then we have animal life, and then we have human life. Those are the 4 categories. Now, I don't know if there's any vegans here. You can raise your hands. Any vegans in the crowd? But we're going to have a little debate now of what's greater according to Kabbalah. Is it animal life or is it plant life? Now, these 4 levels are also found within human beings, ourselves. Like I said before, everything in the universe is found within us. So earth corresponds to action. Plant life corresponds to emotion. Animal life corresponds to intellect. Now, how do we see that? Chassidus explains that how does emotion versus intellect, what's the difference? Intellect can go everywhere. You can think about anything. You can switch from comedy to the deepest philosophy if you want and go all over the place, any moment. Emotion's not like that. Emotion is pretty much up and down. It's pretty much, if I'm happy, I can go happier. If I'm sad, I can go sadder. If I'm angry, I can go angrier. If I'm calm, I can go calmer. It really just goes up and down. And even if you switch to something, it's generally an up and down motion. If you look at the world, animals correspond to intellect because they can roam. They're not attached to anything. They can roam anywhere they want. Plant life can grow, but it's stuck to its source. It's stuck to its root. It grows up and down. That's it. That's the movement. How else do we see a comparison? Animals can dominate plant life, but not vice versa. Just like intellect can control your emotion, right? The mind, says the Alter Rebbe, rules over the heart, as much as it doesn't seem that way, because we're pretty emotional beings. Our minds have control to calm down or to inflame our emotions ultimately. You choose, you can choose. However, However, there is a but to all this. Plant life has an advantage over animal life, just like emotions have an advantage over intellect in certain ways. Plant life is connected to its source. When you look at a tree, when you look at something, you can see it doesn't have that ego. When you look at it, you can see that it is getting its whole nourishment from its source in the earth. Animals, not so much. So when you look at a human being, do we see more plant-like or more animal-like? So while the baby's in the womb, it's like a plant, right? It has the umbilical cord. It's connected to its source of life at that moment, the body.
I don't know if you have.
Second. So the baby in the womb is connected like the plant's connected. However, and by the way, there is an exception because fish are very unique in Judaism. Fish are considered, like we try to have fish on Shabbat. Fish are, the Jewish people are called the fish because they're always immersed in water. Fish are connected to their source of life. They do show that kind of connection. And that's why they're able to withstand, summer, winter, anything, because they have that ability. So emotions are very deep connected to the soul because they are connected to that idea of being connected to your source, meaning that if someone's kind by nature or someone's cruel by nature, it's not that easy to overcome. You can definitely, there is some nurture involved, but nature plays a big role. So the emotions are something that's very deeply connected to your soul. All of this is to say, when we say that man is a tree of the field, Torah says humans are like trees of the field, not like animals, trees. It's teaching us, says Chassidus, that our primary mission in life is to refine not our minds, our emotions, is to work on our emotions. The Talmud says, it likens the trees of the Garden of Eden that God said you could eat from, right? God said, from all these trees you can eat from. The Talmud says those refer to Torah scholars who are befitting, meaning whose intellect has affected their emotions. Those ones you can eat from. Those ones you can, so to speak, receive from. Again, the Talmud is making the same reference as the Torah, saying that a person is like a tree of the field. We're not here to say you don't engage your intellect. Clearly, the mind is crucial to how we affect our life and our emotions, but not to get stuck there. To recognize that, and that's why in the classes we do, we always try to incorporate meditations. We want to take what we're learning and have it impact our lives and impact our midot, our emotions. I think it wasn't Aristotle. There was some philosopher back in the day who his disciples caught him doing something immoral, and they said, "Teacher, you've taught us morality. You taught us about." He said Socrates or whoever it was. I don't want to defame them. I am that person in the classroom. It doesn't mean I have to be that always. Meaning this is what I teach. It doesn't mean I have to live it myself. And Judaism saying no, you have to live it as well. So human life is very challenging. It's very difficult. Not like a tree or plant life. We humans, most of our lives are disconnected openly, at least, from our source. Even though I believe, God is giving us, as you breathe in breath every moment, it's coming from Hashem. Every moment you're in the umbilical cord of God. You're always connected. But our daily reality is not such. And it's like that for a reason, because like animals, we roam and traverse the earth because we're here to elevate the sparks. We're here to make a dwelling for God in this earth. It would be safer to stay in heaven, meaning to be like a tree, to be openly connected to, rooted in your source. But that's not what we're here to do. However, how can we stay rooted? How can we root to our source? That is through Torah and prayer. When you are studying the Torah, when you're coming to a class like this, when you are doing a mitzvah, when you are praying, you are reconnecting openly to your source. And that leaves you with an imprint, even when you're not connected outwardly, it leaves you with that imprint of being connected. That's how we reconnect back to our source. I had a rabbi who said, you know what prayer is for me? Prayer is, Houston, we have a problem. Like, if anybody's old enough to remember Apollo 13, when you go out to space, millennial rabbi, I have to have this is millennial references, 90s, 2000s. When they would go to space, to this day, I'm sure SpaceX does the same thing. They connect back to Florida or Texas or wherever they went from, to know if they're going in the right trajectory, everything's working out. And when he said, when I pray, I'm checking back with my base. My base is not here. My base is in the heavenly realms. My base is where I'm praying to. And I am simply getting the, reminding myself and connecting back to my station, my source, so that I know when I'm done praying, okay, I'm reminding myself, I'm living in this world, I'm doing good in this world, but it's for a mission. I'm here on a specific mission to complete. And lastly, on this analogy, last thing about the tree is that a tree, it's all well and good that it's connected to its source. If it doesn't give shade, if it doesn't give fruit to others, if it doesn't help the world around it, what's the point? What's the point of the tree? So the mitzvot that we do, the taking the inspiration and living with it after this class is over, living with, impacting the people around us and doing mitzvot is what brings that fruit and brings that shade out and doesn't just stay as the tree. Okay, that was a bit about what I wanted to say. We could go further, but I think we're going to go now into a short little meditation on nature and what we just said. Does anybody have a question or thought before we get into it? We're good? All right. It's almost Shabbat. It's almost chill time. So let's just take a moment now. Get comfortable in your seats. And let's take some breaths together. Let's close our eyes so we can visualize what I'm about to share. We're going to visualize this experience. We're going to transport to another time. And let's relax the body. Kind of scan your body for a second and just notice where it might be tense. Oftentimes it's like the shoulders. It could even be the face. Even the eyelids. Everything all day we tense up. So take a deep breath in through your nose. And let out all the tension. Let's do two more. Deep breath in. And out. One more. Into the chest and out. And I want you to imagine a time when nothing that we know of existed. It was utter void, total emptiness, total darkness. And all of a sudden, you see a ray of light that pierces the darkness. And it's the beginning of life. The first wind blows. The first drops of water begin to flow. The first grasses and flowers start to bloom. And all of this life is emanating from divine music, from God's speech. Then the earth, the soil is gathered together, and the first human is formed. And that human is you. Sages say that every soul is rooted in one aspect of the first human soul. We were all in the Garden of Eden. We all made the decision to eat. And imagine you are that first human. You've just been born, fully conscious, fully mature, and you open your eyes. You're the only human on earth. And imagine what it feels like to feel the first wind on your face ever. You take in your first breath of the cool air. You turn and you see a seed flower and sprout and develop. You walk up to the side of the river and you dip your toes in to the cold water. And you take in all the smells, all the taste, all the sight, all coming from nothing. Nothing had to be here. Life could have been black and white, could have had one taste or no taste at all. And even now, so many years later, you have the choice to approach life in a wondrous way, like Adam, to see every day as a miracle, and your life as a gift. And throughout your day, every sense you have, everything you see, hear, taste, you can do it intentionally. You can appreciate it. And you can even elevate that experience by connecting it back to its source. Let's take a final moment now to visualize your day. All the places that you go, the nature you're going to see, the moments outdoors when you breathe in the air, the coffee you enjoy, the meals you have, people you meet. Now, I want you to visualize yourself experiencing those moments with intention and your full presence, what that would be like. Choose something. What would it be like if you sipped your coffee or showered and felt total appreciation and total recognition of the source of every aspect of that experience? Just take another moment and just savor in that experience. And know that you can do this at any time. Even if the whole day was crazy, any moment you can choose with your kids, with a sibling, with a meal, walking down the street. You can savor the moment. And whenever you're ready, you can wiggle your toes and fingers and stretch your neck around a bit. And you can slowly open your eyes. Thank you, guys. Before we conclude tonight's experience, if anybody wants to share anything they took out of it, or maybe in the meditation you just had, or any reflections, I'm always curious what stands out to you from the experience that you relate to and connected to. Feel free, don't have to. Manuel, ask Mo what he got out of the experience.
Yeah, you may.
I'm just inherently calmer when I hear your voice, Daniel.
ASMR.
You gotta work for the comment. Need more voiceovers.
Yeah, I do need to do the comm app one of these days. All right, my friends. Monday starts a 5-week course on the Hebrew letters, where we're going to go super deep into some of the secret power of sound. Today, we're talking about sight and smell and nature. This is on the power of sound of the letters and what they mean. Really excited for that. And we will also have other classes going on, all in the new SoulX Academy. Everything's posted there. I'll put the link in the chat, although I put it everywhere, so I'm sure you've seen it, but I will put it here. And you can join free, although the course is for members only, the recordings and everything like that. But let me know. No one is turned away. If you need to, if you're interested in it, you just let me know.